I worked 40 years for one dream, a home for my family. Every brick in these walls was built with my sweat, my sacrifice, my love. I thought my son understood that. I thought blood meant loyalty. But I was wrong, because the day came when my own son tried to sell the very house I built. For money, for greed, for reasons I may never understand. This is not just my story. It's the story of every father who gave everything and wondered if it was ever enough. Betrayal, regret, revenge, forgiveness. A lesson for every family. Listen carefully, because one day this could be your story too. Before we deep dive into my story, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in comments from which time zone are you listening me. I am John Miller, born in a small steel town in Ohio in the late 1950s, a time when men were measured by the calluses on their hands and the roofs they could keep over their families' heads. If you're listening to me right now, you probably know what I mean, because every father, whether in America or across the ocean in Europe, carries the same weight. The responsibility to provide, to protect, to sacrifice. This is my story, told not through fancy words or polished speeches, but in the plain and honest voice of a man who gave everything he had for one dream. And that dream was my home. From the very beginning, I knew I wasn't destined for greatness in the way the world usually defines it. No Ivy League, no inheritance, no golden handshakes waiting for me. My greatness, if you can call it that, would come from sweat. I started working at the steel mill when I was barely 19. The clang of metal on metal, the roar of furnaces, the suffocating heat, it became the soundtrack of my life. My father, God rest his soul, had done the same before me, and his father before him. In our family, work wasn't just survival. It was identity. But deep down, I swore that my life wouldn't end exactly like theirs. I wanted more, not for me, but for the family I hadn't even built yet. When I married Linda, the prettiest girl in town with eyes as blue as summer skies and a smile that softened the hardest days, I felt like I had won life's lottery. She deserved more than the rundown apartment we first rented, with leaky pipes and cockroaches that scurried whenever you flicked on the lights. She deserved a place where she could plant flowers in the yard, hang curtains without worrying about the landlord, cook Sunday dinners in a kitchen that truly belonged to her. And when our son David was born, oh, I'll never forget holding that tiny boy in my arms, his cries piercing the hospital room. I made a promise to myself and to God. One day, I will give this boy a house. Not just any house, but a home that stands as proof that his father never gave up. Those early years were brutal. I worked double shifts, sometimes 16 hours straight. I'd come home at dawn with blisters tearing through my gloves, sweat stinging my eyes, and a paycheck that always seemed too small against the rising costs of diapers, groceries, and the relentless mortgage. Still, I saved. Every dollar I could. I tucked away like a squirrel before winter. We ate casseroles 3 nights a week, patched my work jeans instead of buying new ones, drove a used Chevy pickup that coughed smoke every morning but still rattled faithfully down the road. That house, oh, that house became more than just an address. It became my obsession. I signed the papers in my early 30s, a 30-year mortgage hanging around my neck like a ball and chain, but I didn't care. When I first turned the key in that lock, I felt taller, prouder, stronger. I walked Linda through the empty rooms, promising her that one day they'd be filled with laughter, photos on the walls, birthday balloons hanging from the ceiling, the smell of apple pie drifting from the oven. And she smiled at me, tears in her eyes, because she knew what it meant to me. I poured my soul into that place. Every nail I hammered, Every coat of paint I brushed, every creak in the floorboard I fixed with my own hands. It was a piece of me. Summers were spent mowing the lawn under the scorching sun, sweat dripping down my back as I waved to neighbors. Winters were spent shoveling snow from the driveway before dawn, so Linda wouldn't slip, so David could get to school safely. Every Christmas, I strung up lights even when my fingers went numb in the cold, because I wanted my son to look at our house and feel pride. On the 4th of July, I set up a grill in the backyard, inviting neighbors over, letting David run around with sparklers while burgers sizzled on the fire. I wasn't rich, not by a long shot, but every crack in the walls, every dent in the banister, every scratch on the kitchen counter told a story of family, of sacrifice, of love. And I thought, no, I believed that one day my son would understand, that he would see the sweat that stained those walls, the dreams that built those rooms, and he would say, my dad gave me this. Of course, it wasn't easy. There were nights I came home, so tired I collapsed in the chair without eating. Nights when Linda and I whispered about bills long after David had gone to sleep, wondering if we'd make it to the next paycheck. Times when layoffs threatened the mill, and I thought we'd lose everything. But somehow we pulled through. I took side jobs, fixing neighbors' fences, repairing engines, even delivering newspapers before my morning shift. I swallowed pride for overtime. Every father listening knows what I mean. When a weight of the world presses on your shoulders, you don't complain. You just carry it because you have no choice. And David, he grew up under that roof. His first steps were on that living room carpet. His first baseball glove was tossed to him in the backyard I worked so hard to maintain. I sat in the bleachers at his little league games, covered in grease and dirt from work, cheering louder than anyone else. I stayed up late helping him build science projects, even when I had to be at the mill at 5 a.m. I sacrificed everything so he could have a chance I never had. I thought I was teaching him what it meant to be a man, to work, to protect, to honor family above all. Looking back, I realized maybe I was too quiet about it. Maybe I should have spoken more openly about the struggles, instead of just carrying them. I assumed he would see, would understand, that he would connect the dots between my tired eyes and the roof over his head. But kids, they don't always see the weight their parents carry. They think houses just exist. That food just shows up on the table. That Christmas lights just appear on the gutters. They don't see the late nights, the skipped meals, the quiet tears in the bathroom when bills pile too high. And I never wanted him to. I wanted him to have a childhood free of worry. Maybe that was my mistake. Still, every time I unlocked that door after a long day, I reminded myself, this house is my legacy. Not money, not fame, not titles, just this house, standing tall against storms, sheltering my family, telling the world, here lived a man who never gave up. By the time I reached 60, my body was breaking down. My back ached like fire. My knees screamed when I climbed the porch steps, and my hands shook from decades of labor. But I also carried pride, because at last, the mortgage was paid. The house was truly ours. Mine, Linda's, David's. I imagined one day passing it to him, letting him raise his own children in the rooms where he once played. That was the dream that kept me alive through every long night at the mill. And as I sat on that porch in the summer twilight, rocking in an old wooden chair, watching fireflies flicker over the yard, I felt something rare in a father's life: peace. I thought the hardest battles were behind me. I thought sacrifice had finally bought security. I thought I was safe. But as I tell you this now, I realize how wrong I was. Because sometimes the sharpest knives don't come from strangers, or enemies, or fate. Sometimes they come from the very hands you once held when they were small enough to fit inside your palm. Sometimes betrayal lives under your own roof, hidden in the eyes you love most. And that is where my story begins. I never thought the day would come when the walls I built with my bare hands would echo with betrayal. But life has a way of breaking even the strongest man in places no hammer or nail can repair. And for me, it started quietly, not with thunder, not with fire, but with a silence that crept into my house like a thief. It began after Linda passed. God, losing her was like having the ground ripped out from under me. 40 years of marriage, and then emptiness. The kitchen table felt bigger without her laugh bouncing off the walls. Her garden, once bursting with colors, wilted like my spirit. I tried to stay strong for David, telling myself, he needs me. I can't fall apart. But truth be told, I was already broken. I sat in my chair at night, staring at her empty seat, whispering conversations into the void as if she could still hear me. That's when I started leaning on David more. He was my only son, my blood, my reason to keep breathing. I thought, now it's his turn to stand by me, the way I always stood by him. And at first, he did. He visited often, helped with groceries, even brought me meals sometimes. But slowly, little cracks began to show. He'd sigh when I asked for help fixing the porch steps. He'd check his phone during our dinners. He stopped asking me how I was, stopped looking me in the eye. I brushed it off, thinking he's busy. He has his own life. But then, conversation started to change. He began talking about opportunities, about smart investments, about how our house was sitting on prime property. He spoke in terms I barely understood, words from a world I had no part of. Equity, refinancing, liquid assets. To me, it was simple. This house was my blood and sweat. To him, it was numbers. One night, he came over with papers. I can still see the way he slid them across the table, his eyes darting from the documents to my face like he was testing the waters. "Dad," he said, "I've been talking with some folks. The housing market is hot right now. We could sell this place, split the money, and I could help invest it. You'd be set for life." The words felt like a punch to the gut. Sell this house. The house I had nearly died to keep. The house where his mother took her last breath. My voice shook as I told him, "Son, this house is not for sale. This is not just wood and bricks. This is our home." He frowned, frustrated. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly. You're alone in this big place. It's too much for you. Wouldn't it be better to downsize? You deserve comfort, not this old thing." That old thing. His words cut deeper than any blade. To him, it was just a structure. To me, it was the story of my life. But I bit back my anger and said gently, "One day, this will be yours. You'll raise your children here. Don't throw it away for cash." He dropped it that night, or so I thought. Weeks passed, but I noticed him growing colder, more distant. He visited less. His calls became shorter. I told myself I was imagining it. That grief was making me paranoid. Until one morning, there was a knock at my door. Two men in suits stood there, holding clipboards. They introduced themselves as real estate appraisers, here to inspect the property. I was stunned. I didn't call for an appraisal. I told them. "Your son did," one replied matter-of-factly. My knees went weak. I waved them off and shut the door, my heart pounding. That night, I confronted David. He didn't even look ashamed. "Dad, I'm just trying to help you. You don't understand finances the way I do. This is the smart move." I slammed my fist on the table so hard the glasses rattled. "You went behind my back. In my own house. Do you know what this place means to me? To your mother? To you?" His jaw tightened. "It's just a house, Dad. Mom's gone. It's time to move on. Those words, I'll never forget them. Just a house. As if the decades of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the broken body I carried, were nothing. I stared at the boy I had raised, the boy I had cheered for, the boy I had given every ounce of myself to, and I didn't recognize him. From that moment on, the distance between us grew into a canyon. He stopped visiting altogether. Weeks turned into months, and silence filled the spaces where laughter used to live. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. I unfolded it with shaking hands, my eyes scanning words that blurred through tears. It was from a lawyer. My own son had filed paperwork, trying to force me into selling the house. My chest tightened like a vice. Betrayal doesn't always come with knives or bullets. Sometimes it comes with signatures and legal terms. My son, the one I carried on my shoulders, the one I worked my bones to dust for, was dragging me into court to take away the only thing I had left. I can't describe the pain. It wasn't anger, though that was there too. It was grief, like losing Linda all over again. Except this time, she wasn't there to comfort me. This time, the person tearing me apart wasn't death. It was my own blood. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak around me. Every groan of the wood, every whisper of the wind through the cracks, felt like the house itself was alive, sharing in my sorrow. I whispered to Linda's memory, did we do something wrong? Did we raise him wrong? The silence that followed was the heaviest sound I've ever heard. Neighbors began to notice. Some avoided the topic, others whispered pity behind my back. A few came by with casseroles, trying to show support without saying too much. But their eyes told the story. They couldn't believe it either. Court hearings followed. Sitting in that cold room, across from my son, while lawyers debated the fate of my home, it felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. When the judge asked questions, he spoke of me as though I were some burden, some old man clinging to the past, standing in the way of progress. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to remind him of everything this house stood for. But the words caught in my throat, because deep down, I feared the truth. Maybe he had changed beyond saving. That night, when I returned home from the hearing, I walked through every room slowly, touching the walls, the banisters, the windows. Each one whispered memories. David's laughter echoing down the hall, Linda humming in the kitchen, birthday candles glowing in the dining room. It was all slipping away, and not because of fate, but because of my own son's choices. And that was the betrayal that broke me. You know, when you're young, you think regret is something that lives in old age. But the truth, regret is born the very moment trust is broken. And I carried that weight every single day after David turned against me. I'd wake up in the mornings and sit at the edge of my bed, staring at the light creeping through the blinds. The house would be silent, but not peaceful. More like suffocating silence, the kind that presses against your chest. I'd listen for sounds that weren't there anymore. Linda humming as she brewed her coffee, David's footsteps running down the stairs when he was a boy, the TV playing late night shows we laughed at together. But all I heard was emptiness. And in that emptiness, the questions came. Questions that gnawed at me like termites inside the wood of this house. What did I go wrong? Did I spoil him too much? Was I too soft? Too hard? Did I give him too much? Did I fail him as a father? The memories started to feel like ghosts haunting me. I'd see David as a toddler, running through the backyard with his arms stretched wide, pretending to be an airplane. I'd remember kneeling on the grass, cheering him on at Little League, yelling his name until my throat was raw. I thought about the times I held him when he cried after falling off his bike, the nights I stayed awake rocking him when he had a fever. And then I thought about the times I wasn't there. The late shifts, the double jobs, the weekends I spent hammering nails instead of playing catch. I told myself I was working for him, for Linda, for the family. But now, sitting alone, I wondered, did he see it as sacrifice? Or did he see it as absence? Maybe I worked so hard to give him everything that I forgot the one thing he needed most: time with me. Maybe he learned to measure love in dollars, not moments, because that's what he saw me chasing all those years. The thought tore me apart. I began to blame myself. His greed, his coldness, it had to come from somewhere. And who else could he have learned it from but me? I remembered when he was a teenager, asking me why I cared so much about paying off the house early. I had snapped at him. You'll understand one day. Money and property are security. Without them, you're nothing. I thought I was teaching him responsibility. Maybe I was teaching him obsession. Maybe he took my lessons and twisted them, believing that the house wasn't a home, just a prize to be cashed in. At night, I'd sit in Linda's old rocking chair, staring at her picture. I'd whisper apologies into the air. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Maybe I pushed him wrong. Maybe I failed him. You were always softer with him, always knew how to guide him. Without you, I didn't know how. My voice would crack, and sometimes I'd cry, quietly, so nobody but the walls could hear. The regret wasn't just about him. It was about me too. I regretted every harsh word I ever spoke to Linda when I came home tired. I regretted not taking her on that trip she always dreamed of before she got sick. I regretted thinking I had more time. Because the cruelest lesson life teaches is that time is never promised. As weeks dragged into months, the court battle raged on. But in between the paperwork and the hearings, the loneliness grew. My friends had their own lives, their own families. Some had already passed on. And me? I was just a stubborn old man in a too-big house, trying to fight a battle I wasn't sure I could win. And then came the darkest nights, the ones where I sat on the porch, staring at the stars, a bottle of whiskey by my side, asking myself if it was even worth it. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm holding on to ghosts. Maybe I should just sign the papers, let it go, move into a small apartment, and disappear quietly. But every time that thought came, I'd hear Linda's voice in my head, soft but firm, the way she used to talk when she wanted to keep me steady. Don't you dare, John. Don't you dare let go of what we built. Don't you dare let him throw away our life like trash. Her voice kept me alive. Her memory kept me fighting. And yet, I couldn't shake the regret. Because even as I fought, even as I clung to the house, part of me wondered if maybe I had lost my son long before this battle began. Maybe the betrayal wasn't sudden. Maybe it was years in the making. I'd lie awake at night, imagining conversations that never happened. I'd picture myself sitting with David as a teenager, telling him not just about work and money, but about love, about loyalty, about what family really means. I'd picture myself putting down the hammer on weekends and taking him fishing more often. I'd imagine myself hugging him tighter, telling him I'm proud of you more times than I actually did. And that regret, it didn't just hurt. It hollowed me out. Because the truth was, I could fight for the house. I could fight in court. But I couldn't fight time. I couldn't rewind the clock and fix what I broke. There's nothing heavier than a father's regret. It doesn't sit on your shoulders. It sits in your chest, pressing down with every heartbeat, reminding you of what you lost, and worse, what you might have caused. And as I sat in that empty house, night after night, I realized something brutal. I wasn't just mourning Linda anymore. I was mourning the son I used to know. And that was the reflection that nearly destroyed me. People think revenge is fire. They think it burns hot, destroys quick, and then you're free. But I've learned that revenge is ice. It freezes you, traps you, keeps you stuck in the same storm long after the other man has walked away. And I was tired of being frozen. The court battle dragged for nearly 2 years. 2 years of lawyers, papers, hearings, bitter stares across rooms where once we shared birthday cakes. 2 years of nights in this house, walking past family photos that felt more like gravestones than memories. But then one day it ended. The judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. My son's petition to sell it was denied. I thought I'd feel joy, relief, maybe even triumph. But when the gavel hit the wood and the ruling came down, all I felt was emptiness. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I just survived. David stormed out of the courtroom that day without looking at me. No hug, no handshake, not even a word, just silence. And in that silence, I realized something that hurt more than all the battles combined. I'd kept the house, but I'd lost my son. That night, I sat in the living room with a single lamp on. The house was quiet, too quiet, and for the first time in my life, I asked myself, what good is a house without a family in it? The walls that once held laughter now echoed with loneliness. The backyard where I grilled burgers on the 4th of July was just empty grass. The kitchen table where Linda set her Sunday dinners had become nothing more than wood and dust. I looked around at the trophies, the photos, the memories frozen in frames, and it hit me. I fought for this house like it was my soul. But maybe, just maybe, I should have been fighting for my son instead. And that thought broke me. I poured myself a drink and sat down at the table, staring at Linda's picture. I spoke to her like I always did when the night grew heavy. I did it, honey. I kept the house. But I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know if I did right by him. I don't know if I did right by you. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not angry tears. Not bitter tears. But deep, soul-crushing tears. Tears of a man who realized that winning can sometimes feel like losing. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I didn't hear from David. No calls. No letters. Nothing. And in that silence, I had to face the ugliest truth of all. Maybe I loved the house too much. Maybe I treated it like a fortress instead of a home. Maybe I made my son feel like he was competing with bricks and wood for my love. And that's when forgiveness crept in. Not for him, but for me. I started forgiving myself for the nights I missed dinner because of work. For the times I snapped at him when I was tired. For the lessons I taught too harshly. For the love I sometimes showed in dollars instead of hugs. I forgave myself because carrying regret is like carrying chains, and I wanted to walk free before my time was up. One Sunday morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to David's house. I stood at his door with trembling hands. When he opened it, his face was hard, cold, unfamiliar. But I spoke anyway. "Son," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't come here to fight. I didn't come here to talk about the house. I came here to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I failed you. I'm sorry if I made you feel like property mattered more than you. It never did. You mattered more than anything. You still do." For a moment, he just stared at me. His eyes welled up, but his jaw stayed tight. He didn't invite me in. He didn't hug me. He just whispered, "I need time, Dad," and closed the door softly. I stood there on his porch for a long while, staring at the door, my chest heavy but my soul lighter, because I had finally said what I needed to say. And whether he forgave me now, tomorrow, or never, it was in his hands, not mine. As I drove home, I looked at the old house differently. Yes, it was still mine. Yes, it still held Linda's memories. But I finally understood the truth. It was never about the house. It was about the love inside it. And love doesn't live in walls. It lives in people. Maybe one day my son will forgive me. Maybe one day we'll sit on that porch together again, father and son, sharing coffee instead of silence. Maybe one day. Until then, I'll keep the lights on in this house, not for me, but for him. A beacon, a reminder that no matter what he did, no matter how far he strays, a father's love is still here, waiting. And if you're listening to my story, son, or if you're a son out there hearing this, remember this. Your father may not be perfect. He may stumble. He may shout. He may fail in 100 ways. But behind every wrinkle, every scar, every sacrifice, there's a man who gave his life for you. Don't wait until the chair at the table is empty to understand that. Don't wait until the house is silent to hear the love that was always there. Because one day, sooner than you think, the only voice left will be your own, whispering regret into the dark. And trust me, son, regret is the heaviest chain a man can carry. If you're still listening, maybe my story touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of your own father or your own son. Betrayal cuts deep, but forgiveness heals deeper. And if one father out there can avoid my mistake, then telling this story was worth it. Fathers, sons, families, we all carry scars. If this story made you feel something, share it. Maybe another dad needs to hear it tonight. And if you want more stories like mine, stay with me, subscribe, and walk this journey with me.